I am Jim Collison, and live from our virtual studios virtually around the world. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on March 10th, 2021. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you're listening live, love to have you join us in our chat room. There's a link right above me on our live page. It'll take you to YouTube. Sign in with your Google account and join us in chat. We'll be taking your questions a little bit later in the program. If you're listening after the fact and you still have questions, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to subscribe to Call to Coach on any podcast app. We're available out there. Or if you want to subscribe on YouTube, you can do that as well. Saurav Atri is our host today. Saurav is a regional director for Southeast Asia. And Saurav, it's always great to see you, although you look like you're at a new location. Welcome back to Call to Coach.
Thank you, Jim. And yes, slightly new location, different backdrop. And again, it's always great to be back on Call to Coach, Jim, with you and with our featured guests as well. And today I'm really excited for the Southeast Asia edition. We've got Coach Andrea Goseco, who is an ICF PCC credentialed coach and has been coaching for the past 11 years. She takes successful leaders to the next level of success by uncovering their blind spots and focusing on team strategies that lead to high engagement and productivity. And as an executive coach, she is known to ask tough questions, which we'll get to explore today, and probing questions balanced with humility, empathy, and respect to make coaching a safe place for them. And she talks about, this is like a Rubik's Cube. She has the ability to notice patterns and see how those pieces fit together with each other and find the right combination to unlock what leaders and teams need to get them to the next level. And we'll be diving deeper with her today, also exploring what she looks for in those patterns as well. So we can also learn a little bit there. She's certified with US-based courses, including Gallup's Coach Certification, High Performing Team Leader, and the CliftonStrengths Discovery course as well. Coach Anna, welcome to the session today, and we'd love to get to know you better, starting with the top 5.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Saurav and Jim. I'm very excited to be here today. So my top 5, which I use very often in coaching, is individualization. I have woo, I have empathy, positivity, and connectedness. And if you look at the 4 domains of strengths, I'm really focused on the influencing and relationship building. And one of the strengths that I really use so often is my number 1, which is individualization. And so what that does is it looks at the patterns and the different nuances of people that I talk to. And I realized that ever since I was young, I love doing that. But I think I was taking that for granted. I felt that everyone knew how to do that. But when I took the Gallup course, I realized that I'm pretty unique in that way. And it's really helped me in coaching because it helped me read people. And I like to kind of, I describe myself as someone who likes solving like a Rubik's Cube puzzle. So those are people puzzles. And it's also related to like being a forensic scientist in a way, looking at clues, trying to discover patterns, trying to see what the real root cause is. And I've used that a lot in my coaching.
Beautiful. Thank you, Coach Andrea. And you talked about being a scientist, and approaching that. And I see a lot of scientists have their own niche that they work on. So what are your main themes in coaching, and how do you use that in combination with CliftonStrengths?
Yeah, so right now, especially during the pandemic, and it's a theme, I have 2 themes that I usually use, and that is authenticity and resilience. And I find that ever since the pandemic started, these have been very useful themes. And well, one is authenticity is so important because it's our North Star. When everything around us changes, like the environment, the pandemic, it's something that we can't control. We have no control of. But who we are deep inside, who we are as individuals, our individual personalities, or our values, our beliefs, that's ours, and no one can take that away from us. And for me, that's our North Star, that's our strength, that's our anchor. And I help people really bring out that authenticity whenever I coach them. And when they're able to realize that, they're able to manage the environment around them. Because my belief has always been, if you're able to manage yourself, if you're able to self-manage yourself and you know yourself really well, you can manage the environment around you. A lot of times people think that the environment can't controls them and they let the environment controls them. But I always believe in that it's our reaction to the environment. That's what we can control. So throw us anything, throw us challenges or difficulties. It's how we face the environment. It's how we react to it and how we think about it. And that's what I use in coaching. So that's one, authenticity. Another is resilience. So resilience is something I think I picked up from my parents. So they taught me how to be resilient. And I feel like it's something that is very useful right now, especially with leaders and teams. It's the ability to be able to bounce back, and resilience combined with grit, also the ability to be able to persevere and to finish a task no matter how difficult it is. And I think that's so important, especially in the world we live in today where it's ever changing, so challenging, so many things happening. So if you use resilience, you're able to really face the situation head on, and you're able to bounce back from it and come out as a winner.
Wow, Coach Andrea, these two topics are so close to my heart, and especially what we've been noticing as well in the industry, where the world is going through a pandemic. But most importantly, we've been noticing as well that there's a physical distance that has come in as people have moved from work from home, which is also creating somewhat of an emotional distance as well. And authenticity and resilience are two more very important topics right now that we've been hearing a lot more that coaches and leaders want to know more about. So tell us a little bit more. How do you use CliftonStrengths and authenticity in helping leaders as an executive coach to them?
Yeah, very interesting question, because one of the ways I use it is in helping them just honor who they are and recognize what's important to them. One way I use it is helping them identify what their purpose is. So usually in session one for the leaders that I coach, I help them come up with their purpose. And sometimes you think that if you're a leader in an organization or a CEO, you already know what your purpose is. But the surprising thing is a lot of people kind of know it, but then they're not able to really articulate it. So articulating it is very, very powerful. And I want to share, though, for people who have not taken the CliftonStrengths Finder and who are and coaches there who are coaching people without Strengths Finder yet, there's a way to actually mine for strengths. So let me give you like a very interesting example. So I was coaching someone a few weeks back, and I was trying to mine what was important for her. And she was sharing with me that, okay, I'll give you some guide questions that I asked them, so maybe that might be useful for you. And so one question that I asked them is, what are the things that you're drawn to? Or what are the things that excite you? So give me the big things, give me the little things. And it's important to stress the little things, because a lot of times people start thinking, what are those big things that I'm drawn to? But you can give examples like even the little things. So this client that I was talking to, I said, okay, let's start with maybe outside work and then we go to work. So what are the little things that excite you outside work? And, she started thinking, she said, I like watching Netflix. Oh, Netflix. Okay, tell me why you like watching Netflix. And she said, oh, I like watching Netflix because I'm able to see how people think and how they react to different situations. I like trying to read them, trying to anticipate their next move. Right. So I said, that's great. And she said, also at home, I like spending time with my family. I like also calling friends, building close relationships with them. And then I said, okay, great. So what about work? What was it like at work? And she said, oh, at work, I like in a meeting, I like being able to read people. I like being able to see what their thoughts are, what their motivations are, what drives them to do a certain task. So you can see already with those two examples that there are common patterns that are coming out. So two patterns that can come out from this is relator. So she likes spending time with people. You can see that people is there. It's present in understanding people in Netflix, but also spending time with friends and relatives at home. And there's also that part about trying to understand how a person feels or how a person thinks. And that is individualization. And so when I confirmed that with her and I described what individualization was and what relator was, she said, "Oh yeah, that's who I am. That's really who I am." And then after that, I think a few months later, I made her take the test, the CliftonStrengths test, and that came out. It showed that she had relator and she had individualization. But what makes that conversation so powerful also in finding out what their strengths are, I combine that with purpose. So strengths with purpose is so powerful. So what I do is when they've identified, let's say that person, she's identified like, yeah, I like developing people. I like being able to see how they think, how they feel. And then I connected that, okay, now that you know that, what is the contribution that you can make to the people around you or to society or to the world around you? So it becomes bigger than just that strength that you own by yourself. It's thinking about how can I make an impact? How can I make a contribution? And that's what purpose really is. I think we're also all created to be able to be able to make that impact in that contribution to the world around us. And that's what makes a longer lasting purpose. It's not about just for yourself, but for others around you. And throughout the coaching conversation, I do a 6-month coaching conversation with people. I always bring that back. Every time that I feel like they're losing their way, or every time that, let's say, they're not able to go to the committed things that they're supposed to do, or the areas that they're supposed to work on, I go back to purpose. This is aligned to your purpose. This is connected to who you are. And it's like I said earlier, strengths can be an anchor. And it really is an anchor when you use it strongly with purpose. Another example. Go ahead.
No, so please continue. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, I just had a probing question on that one. So interesting you mentioned around the patterns that you notice, and especially around purpose as well. For the coaches listening in, what could they be listening for in those conversations where you're able to pick up those cues well? I say this like a surgeon, he knows when he opens up a patient, he knows what to look for because he's trained his eye as well. And that's what an executive coach over a decade of experience can do as well. So tell us a little bit more about what patterns do you notice and what do you listen for?
Yeah, I like your analogy, Saurav. Surgeon. Yeah, it's like a surgeon who opens up a body and knows already what to do with it. And listening, listening is very important, because when you listen, there's so many things that you're hearing, right? So which are the things that you're going to be picking up from that? And so I think what you have to notice are the common things that they're saying, the patterns. Let's say that that example that I gave you, that she was saying that, oh, I like listening. I like finding out in Netflix. I like finding out what that the character is thinking or feeling, or what the character's next move is. So next move, character, and you're hearing that what she's talking about is the thoughts of that character, or what the character is feeling. So it's really going to the individual. It's going to the person. And then I try to verify that, so that's why I don't want them to just give me one example. I try to mine for more examples, and I say more. Maybe you can give me more examples about how you use that at home. And so also I forgot to mention earlier that the example she gave, when she relates with her family, she tries to see, oh, what will my mom like best? How do I best communicate with her? So she's trying to read into her mom or her dad, her brothers, her sisters. And at work as well, she does the same thing, so that I can try to confirm it. So one rule that I have is, don't rely on one example. Try to get many examples as possible, and try to see the common words that they use. They may be using the words in many different ways, but if you try to write it down, sometimes I write it down as I talk to them, I see that there is a pattern. There is many ways of saying that. Like example, she's saying things like, yeah, I'm listening to how they're thinking, how they're feeling. Then she says it again about her mom and dad. Or I'm able to just communicate to them because I know how they think and feel. In the office, when I'm able to, in a meeting, I want to be able to see what that person needs. So, if you put that all together, it shows me a particular theme. And so, because I kind of memorize,
advice there on that. And I'm just building on that a little bit more. I think there's a very interesting couple of comments also coming through purpose part of it as well. How do you tie these stories back to their purpose, Coach Andrea?
Yeah. So, okay. So if they say that, I'm someone, I realize that I'm someone who likes to help people, develop people. I like to be able to understand how they think and feel. And so with that, if you're a leader in an organization, you try to connect it to what is your legacy? Or because we all are asking ourselves that question, who is the person that we want to become? Who are we becoming? It's always that question. And that question, who are we becoming, helps you think about every action and every decision that you make every single day. So I always believe in acting purposefully or with intention. And to be able to do that, that's why you have to tie it back to your purpose. So back to your question, Saurav, in creating that purpose. It's also thinking about, okay, so I'm a person who likes to be able to read people, to understand how they think and feel. And so connecting that with impact, or how do I impact the world around me? And so thinking about, so I'm a leader who wants to be able to understand how people think and feel. And I want to be able to leave a legacy by developing future leaders. I want to be able to grow them. And, when I say words like, be careful also with general words like grow. What do you mean by growing? So you have to make them clearly define what growth means for them. And so she's saying growth means that if I'm able to see that, they've really become better individuals. They've in terms of their values, in terms of their skills as leaders, and that if they transfer to another company, they're all set. So that for me is purpose. So you can see it's really beautiful because it becomes bigger than yourself.
Wow. And as you think about that transition that you talked about, growth, and I truly believe that leaders want that. They want to be better what they are today. And that's why they seek an executive coach as well. How do you connect that growth to CliftonStrengths and that use that as a segue for them to make that shift for themselves, Coach Anna?
Yeah. So what I do is I try to highlight their top 5 strengths. So knowing that this is their purpose. So if let's say relator or individualization has come out, but then they have 3 other strengths that they should take note of. So I try to bring that to light. I try to show them that, okay, so now you have other 3 strengths. So now how do you all put that together in one purpose, in one purpose statement, or in what you want to do? Because really for me, purpose is what we are built to be, what we believe in with ourselves, and what we're excited to do every single day. So if you put that all together and put the meaning on why we're doing that, and why is a really big motivator, you have to know what your why is in doing everything that you do. So combining all your top 5 strengths, putting that again in one purpose, thinking about not just individualization, relator, the other 3 as well, and how do I now combine it with making an impact to the people that I want to develop, will create that whole purpose statement. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And especially, what might also help would be a specific story you have to share, especially in, areas of struggle for growth from leaders, where they struggle, what some of the challenges are, or what would you share with us that'll help us be aware that how we could do it as well in our own coaching, Konchata?
Yeah, so I like that question, Saurav, because I love uncovering blind spots. And maybe that's one of the things I can share with you today, how I uncover blind spots. So blind spots, because blind, you can't see it, right? And reasons why we can't see blind spots is, one is we don't want to admit that it's there. We see it, it's like furniture, and we don't want to, you're so used to seeing it, we don't want to even admit that it's there. So we're afraid of it. And another one is we really don't know. We're really blind to it. And so one way to do that is to, in a good way, is to look at your strengths in terms of balcony and basement. So for those who are not familiar yet with strengths, balcony is when you're using strengths in the best way and the best outcome. But basement is when it's used in like in a negative way, or there's a negative outcome. So what we want to do in strengths is keep it balanced all the time. And one unique way I do this is for them to be able to keep it in balance. And so I work a lot with triggers in the environment and beliefs that you have about certain things. So example, I had a client who had very strong command. And command is a very good strength because it gets people together. It's a strength where you can influence people around you. In a good way, she was able to get her team together, get her team to follow. But in a not so good way, in the basement, she came out as pushy, maybe sometimes saying things below the belt, too aggressive. So it's not, you can see it's not balanced. And the way I did coaching with her is I helped her identify, first, going back to purpose, what is the kind of leader you want to be anyway? And the interesting thing is she was saying that, I want to be able to develop my people. I want to leave a legacy that when I leave this company that I've developed good leaders. And, I had, like you said earlier, Sarah, in my intro, I like asking tough questions. So I said, okay, if you said that, that seemed to be like it's not happening from the feedback that I'm getting from the people around you. So now how do we live your purpose more? And maybe let's start with understanding when that happens to you, when you start bringing your strengths to the basement, that command to the basement, what is happening? So I think that's a question. That's a good question. Like, what is happening around you? What are you experiencing? What are you thinking? And so she realized in that activity is that the times that it happens, so you have to ask yourself, what is the environment that triggers me to bring it to the basement? So in that example, she realized that what triggers her are people who she feels like are not up to par with what she knows, and she gets irritated with people like that. So every time she's faced with someone like that, she really attacks that person, breaks that person down and all that. And in her mind, she's rationalized the thought that, oh, this is my way of helping that person. So you see, another thing in understanding triggers is the thoughts that we have in our head. So her thought is, and the story she tells herself is that when I do that, I'm helping that person. I'm breaking that person down. It's good for that person. And so, but then she realized that it wasn't helping at all because people were afraid of her. People weren't approaching her. She wasn't that leader that she wanted to be. And then she had to rewrite that story in her head and her beliefs about it. And she realized that what she had to tell herself is that when I use command, I have to be able to use it in a good way. I have to be able to influence people. I have to ask my question is, I have to ask that question to myself, how am I helping them? How can I help them in this situation? And one thing that I also use is when you understand your environment, when you understand what triggers you, right? And you understand the thoughts that go in your head that are not really helping you, because the action, when you act on something, it first starts with a thought. So you have to change the thought or the narrative in your head, because that's what really changes the action steps that come after that. So we had to really work on that. We had to dive deep, and she realized that some of it was beliefs from the past, maybe even beliefs from childhood that she was carrying with her that were not working for her anymore. So one important step is, once you know what your triggers are, once you know what the wrong narrative in your head is that's making those results happen, you have to stop and pause. So I've always believed in becoming reflective versus reactive, because we're so used to just reacting to anything that's thrown at us without realizing that we're not filtering that. And if we don't filter, maybe the result is not good. So one way to check if the reaction, our reaction is good or not, is a question of stop and pause and ask, what will help me in this situation? What will help others in the situation? What will help the organization in this situation as well? So it's really understanding how your strengths plays and balcony and basement, and finding that balance. And so what I just shared with you today is how to bring your strengths back in balance. And I find that using strengths, it's a great way for people to receive that kind of feedback on the areas that they need to work on. So let's say I'm working with a team, and the team is helping their group. The leader is helping their team help their group develop and work on the areas of growth. It's a good way to give feedback, because you can say that, oh, look, you have this theme. Example, you have ideation and it's great. You have this at the balcony. There are great things about it. But there's, with every strength is a corresponding basement. So you have to know what the basement is to be able to bring it up to balance. So it turns out to be like a fun conversation, a very interesting one, and a conversation full of curiosity, instead of a conversation where you feel like, oh, I feel insulted, or I feel like defensive, or I feel like you're criticizing me. So it comes out in a more positive way. It's a more positive language when you use it with using the language of strengths.
I really like that reflective versus reactive approach and sort of managing your triggers, Coach Andrea. How do you help them keep this sustainable? Because people are also biased with their own perspectives and own programming. How do you help them create sustainability in this?
Yeah, I always tell people that, I don't know if you're the New Year's resolution syndrome. That's why when at the start of the new year, like 2021, I want to be this and that this year. And then after 2 months, 3 months, it's gone. You're back to normal. So the problem with that is there's an intention, right? Intention that I want to be that. But the problem is, if you just stay with intention, if you just stay with realization, it just stays there. the hardest part about change is not the realization. For me, it's the action step, because the action steps are the changes that you need to make, or adjustments that you need to make to yourself and to your life to make that happen. That's why it goes back again to purpose. Because it all goes back to, why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to change? And you realize that, wait, it's connected to who I want to be. It's connected to my purpose. And so what I want to say is the key step that you need to do is to be very, very intentional. Not just intentional in terms of thought, but in action as well. So every single day, let's say you wake up in the morning, you say, oh, I want to be a better leader today because I want to have more empathy. And you have to not just say empathy, but how do you want to have more empathy? I want to be able to reach out to people, listen to them more than talk. That's a specific way. So you have to be very specific with the action step that you're going to do. And at the end of the day, you can do a check-in with yourself. So you're kind of coaching yourself. If you don't have a coach, you can definitely coach yourself. So in the morning, you start off with that intention. When you wake up, you don't have to think about it because it's already in your thoughts. So at the end of the day, you can ask yourself, how was I able to have more empathy today? How was I able to listen more to people? How was I able to reach out to them and really honor who they are and validate and acknowledge what's important for them? And so, and I like using scales as well. So I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how was I today? Oh, I was a 3 today. Okay, that's okay. So tomorrow I can try to aim at a 4 or a 5. So, and in this whole change process, it's easy to learn a skill, but the hardest thing is when you want to be able to change your behavior, it takes some time. So I want to say that in being able to bring your strengths also from basement to balcony to something in the middle also, is to be very patient and kind with yourself. Because change is a process, it will take time, but as long as you're intentional about it in action and in thought, every single day, it's definitely going to happen. I've seen it change. I've seen it happen. Usually, if you're very purposeful and you're committed and you're intentional, it's going to happen in 2 to 3 months. I've seen it happen with the leaders I've coached. And then the fourth, fifth, and sixth month, because like I said, I coach leaders for 6 months, it's already just getting used to the habit and just building that habit. The hardest part, remember, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, is the first 2 to 3 months of change. You've seen that in the pandemic. That's the biggest change we've had. But we're slowly moving to acceptance already, because we're finding ways to work around it. In the same way that any change that's happening to us, especially, we have to give it time, and we have to be patient with ourselves and kind to ourselves as well.
Wow, that's such a great insights there. And what I like, Coach Anna, you've given practical tips around how to stay reflective, how to stay, build that ability to create growth as well. And especially in the pandemic, we've also been noticing a lot of conversation around emotional resilience as well. I know that's a topic that you talk a lot more about. And Lisa also mentioned in the chat that she really liked your, definition of resilience as well. Tell us a bit more about how do you use resilience with strengths coaching?
Okay. Very interesting, because during the pandemic, a lot of emotions were present, right? For everyone, no one was spared of that. We all went through different stages. And the way I like to use it is, example, when you get up in the morning and you don't feel like working, you don't feel like doing anything, you just want to stay in bed. And so the way to do it is to think about it in the lens of strength. So what are my top 5 strengths, and how do I handle this day using my top 5 strengths? So when you're able to approach it that way, you're able to realize that you have the internal tools. Because sometimes what makes us overwhelmed is that, oh my gosh, I can't solve this situation. I don't have the tools. I don't have anyone to help me. We catastrophize. So if we catastrophize, we feel like we're so helpless or hopeless. But realizing that we do have the internal tools in us. That's why I always use it's back to authenticity again. Combining it with authenticity is knowing that you have the power and internally you have the capabilities and you have the tools in you to make that happen. So knowing your top 5 strengths, you're able to actually approach the day in the lens of strengths. So like, how do I approach my day today? Maybe you can anticipate the challenges you might face. Maybe you're about to face a difficult person in the office. You're about to make a difficult decision. So how do I approach it in the lens of strengths as well? So that helps you it gives you a clue to what's going to keep you engaged. And sometimes also when you're doing your work already for during the day. So I talked about beginning of the day, but during the day also, when you feel disengaged, when you feel like there's low energy. So, you first feel that in your body, something aches, your stomach is in knots, your shoulders start aching. So there's something going on. So when that happens, you just pause. Again, the words of self-compassion is be kind to yourself. And just sit and think about where you are at that moment. So I think the first step is to just recognize your feelings, recognize where you are, and it's okay not to be okay. And then, so when you recognize that, it's easier to solve a problem because you're acknowledging your difficult feelings. And as you acknowledge your difficult feelings, the next step is for you to think about, okay, so now that I feel that way, and I recognize that, so what can I do now? So using my internal toolbox, using my top 5 strengths. So now how do I face my day and face my challenges using my top 5 strengths? I mentioned also during the day, when you feel like you're low energy, you can even look at your top 5 strengths. So it's like a, what do you call this? It's like a guide that you always kind of refer to all the time. So you look at it and say, oh, I feel like maybe ideation is missing, or I feel like maybe connectedness is missing, or I feel like I need to be able to do a checklist and I have achiever, and maybe there's certain things I feel like I haven't achieved. So maybe how can I create small wins? So it's a clue also to why you don't feel engaged. So you can always refer to your top 5 strengths and think about which among these things are not being addressed today and that I need to do more of. Another way to reduce resilience is, let's say there are tasks in the office or tasks at home even that you don't like doing, right? So with the roles we play, there are tasks that we love, but there are also tasks that we don't want to do, but we have to do it because it's our role. One way to be able to motivate ourselves, and I'm very big with motivation and why. So once you know your why and your motivation, you're able to really ask yourself, okay, so now I don't want to do this, I really don't, but then how do I use strengths to be able to help me do this task? How do I encourage myself to do this task? And let me give you an example. I was coaching a leader and she was very strong with her strategic thinking strengths. There's a lot of that, strategic thinking, execution, but she didn't have relationship building. And so in our coaching conversation, she realized that as a leader, she cannot escape from working with people, right? People is an essential part of a leader, of any organization. And she said, can't I just give them tasks to do? Can't I just tell them the direction and, just leave them there? But that it doesn't end there. As a leader, it's all about people. So what I did with her is, okay, I said, I know it's a task you don't want to do, but it's a requirement as a leader. So now how do we use you're using your lens of strengths? So what she did was she started thinking of it as, okay, I am strategic. I am always futuristic. So I have to think about, if I don't take care of my people now, if I don't develop them, what's going to happen to my group? What's going to happen to the organization? So what I do is a lot of value-based coaching. Like I ask them, what's the value that you're going to lose out on? Or what's the value that if you continue to do this, if you continue to change and to reach out to people, what value will it give you? And then, and I tied that up to strengths. And she realized that, maybe I'll have like, if I'm able to level up, they'll even help me plan for the future. They're going to also be able to help me be more efficient also, because my role as a leader is I'm a strategic thinker. So if I'm able to do this, then maybe I can focus more on strategy rather than operations. So you see, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put more meaning in what they're doing, even if it's something that they don't want to do. So you have to always find the meaning. You can't just tell people do this and do that, or you can't tell yourself I have to do this. If you say I have to do it, you're just going to drag your feet. So you have to put the why in everything that you're doing. Why am I doing this anyway? Why is it so important for me? What's the bigger picture in this? And connected to my purpose, where am I heading with all of this? So helicopter view all the time. There's always a lot of zooming in and zooming out. So zooming in, where I'm zooming in is like the details of it, but zooming out, wait, what is all of this? So how can I make sense of all of what I'm seeing? What is the meaning in all of this? It's really the meaning in all of what we're doing that's going to motivate us to do what we want to do and what we have to do.
Love that, Coach Anda. Having that North Star always in your sight is such an important ingredient, especially for leaders, where your decisions impact, hundreds and thousands of people's lives as well. And as you think about, at that leadership level, one of the key things that people talk about and they get pretty nutty about it is, hey, I need to build empathy. Empathy showed up in the bottom five, and they say, what does that mean for us? So, what's your tips and practical advice of how leaders can be more emotionally intelligent, when leading people, especially when they don't lead with, high relationship themes, Coach Anda?
Yeah. So one way to do that is, like, let's say if you look at your 4 quadrants, right, of strengths. So that's relationship building, influencing, strategic thinking, and execution. And you find out that the areas that you're more strong at is, let's say, strategic thinking, right, and execution. And so I go back to being intentional about it. So you have, when you see that, okay, maybe it's not second nature for me to have these relationship building strengths or these influencing strengths. So what do I need to do more of to be able to bring that out using my strategic and execution? So example, if like I'm strong with execution strength, so it's something that if I do, and kind of combining it with strategic also. So if I do this, if I put it in my checklist, I'm able to achieve this. And so think of it as a task, as something that you want to get done. Something that if you get it done, it's connected to the higher purpose. It's connected to what you want for the future. I think it's being really intentional about it. And if you're talking about emotional intelligence, so one question that I've always asked leaders ever since the start of the pandemic is, what is your people strategy? And you have to bring that to the forefront, because I think I mentioned to this in an earlier conversation that leaders a lot of times focus on the goals, like let's say the number goals or the strategies of the business. I think that's great, and that's really what the business is about. But more of what the business is about are the people that work with you. So you have to be able to see how people are doing things, because it's the how that will make the numbers happen. It's the how that will make the strategy happen. The how is more of how people operate, not just how you operate, but how the people around you operate as well. And if you're very concerned about that, if you're concerned and you care about how do I operate, how do the members of my team operate, even how my boss operates and how my peers operate as well, and being intentional about that and making sure that before you enter into a conversation and just tell yourself, I'm a believer of don't rush into a meeting right away. Just go and do it, because that's when you become more reactive again than reflective. So maybe 10 minutes before the conversation, you kind of like take a step back and think, okay, who am I meeting with? What's the purpose of this meeting? But also think about, what kind of a leader should I be in this meeting? Or what does people need from me in this meeting? What do they need? And maybe even telling yourself, I need to listen more. I need to hear what is important for them. Because a lot of times in meetings also, we come in a meeting and it's not a meeting. It's about just us meeting ourselves. So we kind of just tell people this is what I want without really listening to them. And the other day, like I was talking to a stakeholder or a team member of someone I was coaching, and she was saying that she said that, listen, I'm here to listen to you, but in action, when I'm there, when I'm sharing something, she cuts me off. So that's not really listening. So you have to give people the space to be able to talk, the space to be able to express themselves. And you can acknowledge them. You can acknowledge, like, oh, that's great. And you can even use the lens of strengths and acknowledge, and, oh, great, you were a great, you did a great research here, or you're able to communicate well. That's great. So acknowledging them and acknowledging their thoughts, their feelings will make them feel they're validated. Because really, I think deep inside, everyone wants to just be validated, and everyone wants to be acknowledged and honored as well. So if you're able to do that, then you're able to connect with people, because that's also a common question, like how do I connect with my team? How do I influence them during this time of pandemic? So that's a little way, but that little way will go really, really big. If you're doing that to every single person that you meet in the office, in the organization, you're doing that with intention with every single meeting.
Wow, I can see so much of passion. I can sense so much of passion that you have in this topic as well, Coach Anna. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that passion as well. And also just kind of building on, that listening topic you brought in, which is so critical right now. We need to listen better. We need to listen more. And I truly believe listening is what creates trust with people versus talking. So I know a lot of leaders been asking us, they say I'm a weak listener. What tips and advice do you have for them to listen better?
Okay, so they're a weak listener. Again, it has to go with, why am I doing this? Why am I not listening to people? And maybe, okay, let me share with you the common things that I've received from the leaders I coach. Sometimes it's about, oh, I want to get this done right away. Or I have no patience to teach this person. I have no patience to hear them. Like, oh, I know already the answer. So again, it goes back to the question, is that helping the person that you're talking to? Or also thinking about, you may be missing out on what this person's trying to say. Because sometimes, so we have a lot of assumptions, we have a lot of assumptions about people. So it's letting your assumptions out the door. And every time you talk to someone, it's a blank slate. Even if this person has, has done maybe bad things to you, and you've already, in your head, you've already marked them. So I always believe in giving people chances. So when you're able to do a blank slate and just listen to them, you're able to hear their story, hear where they're coming from. And I feel that if you're not able to cut them and you're able to really listen to them, then you're able to really communicate in a way that they will actually listen to you, or that communicate in a way that's important for them. So I think it's and to be able to listen is to just be quiet. And also be careful of your facial expressions. Even if you're frowning, you're scratching your head, that's a sign of, you're questioning what they're saying. So also be careful of how you're presenting yourself in words, the tone of voice, in your facial expression, in the actions that you use as well. Try to stay as neutral and just listen. And so the more you listen, the more they'll really feel like opening up. So the story I shared with you earlier about the person who was very strong in command, you know what happened to her? So after our 6-month coaching program, and actually it is already showing at the 3rd or 4th month, she said, oh, what's happening? People are just approaching me, asking me questions. That's never happened before. And she was telling me I was always the one who was telling them what to do. But now they're the ones going to me. They're the ones asking me questions. They're the ones giving suggestions without me even telling them. What did I do? I was like, ask yourself what you did. And she said, oh, I remember now. It's these little things that I thought were little, but they're actually big things. So like I said, it's these things I just shared with you. It has to first start with intention. It has to first start with caring for the person that you're talking to. Because if you just do it, oh, it's a job. I have to do this because it's a job. I have to do this because I have to hit my numbers. So you have to do it also with, I really care for this person, and it's going to show. Because if you don't start with that, the person that you're talking to will see it. So it's approaching it with that kind of empathy. So trying to connect with them, trying to just listen to them and care about them. I think that's important.
I love that. No, what I'm also hearing here, Coach Anda, is listening requires authenticity as well. You have to be genuinely interested in that person, and there's stories to explore more. And also there was a question that came in earlier by Lisa around tough questions. What could be some examples of tough questions coaches here could walk away with that typically use that worked for you?
Oh, that I use in coaching sessions, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like one was the one I shared with, you mentioned that this is your purpose, right? And this is what's important for you. But right now I'm noticing that you're saying this. And it seems like a little bit different from what you were saying that you wanted for yourself. So say more about that. So you don't kind of tell them that, hey, you did wrong, or hey, it's misaligned or something. You make them see for themselves. So you present the facts to them, you show it to them, and they're the ones who kind of see it already, that there is a disconnect over there, right? So that's a tough question I usually bring out to people. So I call them out in that way, but it's a gentle way of making them call out. So it's not, and it's not me telling them what to do or me telling them that this is what happened. It's making them realize, because in a coaching conversation, when you make them realize it and when you make them admit it, they become more accountable to the process. Because if you did that, then they won't be as accountable because you told them, right? So the more powerful way to do it is make them accountable for it. Also in coaching, like I ask them, let's say if you continue doing this, what value will it give you? Let's say if it's something that's not helping them, right? So I can ask a question like, how is this helping you? How is this not helping you? And in doing this, what value is it giving you? And then if they can't think of the value, then they should stop doing it. If they think of the value, then continue doing it. So I like to work with cost benefit a lot, cost benefit analysis. So it's like a business lingo, but then you can use it for anything actually. And then so I like also some tough questions is if you pull out of the situation and you look at this helicopter view, what do you think is really happening in this situation? So I'm not afraid to actually talk to clients and face them head on and really ask them, how is it serving you? How is it not serving you? Is it helping you? How is it not helping you? Because if you have the client's best interest in mind and not your best interest, or if you're a coach or if you're a leader and you have that person's best interest in mind, the words that are going to come out of your mouth are more for the person that you're talking to. But if you remember situations where it's all about you, the words that are coming out of your mouth are all what's going to work for you, or what's best for you. It's weird. You're trying to help them, but you're coming from your own point of view. So a lot of it is just realizing that you want the best out of them, and so you feel like there's some intuition that's telling you like, I have to ask this question. I have to help them clarify things. Then ask the question. Then sometimes in coaching sessions, even difficult question is when people start crying. So I don't make it like don't make them cry all the time. I mean, it's not supposed to be all about that. But if tears come out, I ask them, where is that coming from? What are you feeling? Because like I said, once you're able to acknowledge and to name what you're feeling and to name what's going on, then it helps you also move forward. So you're helping people as a coach or as a leader. If you're talking to people under you, you're helping people identify what their thoughts are, what they're feeling, what their patterns are. And then the more that they're able to see it, the more they're able to come up with solutions on their own. The reason I think why people are stuck sometimes is that they can't see it. So I think the role of a coach or a role of a leader is to help people see it, see where they're stuck. And that goes with a lot of digging, a lot of finding clues, a lot of finding patterns also, and showing that, presenting that to the person you're talking to and helping them solve it. Yeah.
Great. And that actually tied to a question Lisa's also asked on that, Anda. Could you talk a little bit more about blind spots and helping leaders see what they don't see for themselves? So how do you help the exec see blind spots you hear about from others?
Okay. So the way I like to do it is in a gentle way. So let's say, because my process is always getting, often feedback from the people who work with the leaders. So what I do is I make them focus first on their own self-assessment. So I tell them, what do you think are the areas that you need to work on? Or I present to them their strengths. Okay, these are your strengths. But in looking at your strengths, how can these strengths be used in the wrong way? Or how can these strengths be used in the basement? And so when they come up with that, they say all of that, guess what? Whatever the feedback that the people are saying around them, it's the same, is very similar to what they're saying. So it just sort of cements, or it reinforces what the other people have said about them, and that makes them want to, like, I see it already. It's important. Okay, I'm going to work on it now. Yeah. So that's one way to make them really want to do it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Another way.
Oh. Sorry, just want to check in on what's been some of the biggest insights you have gained in your coaching, especially coaching around authenticity and resilience. What have been some of your own learnings as you're coaching all these leaders as well?
Oh, okay. Well, for myself, it's actually it's nice because this whole coaching journey has helped me also realize a lot of things about myself, people, the world around me as well. And I think that's a nice thing about this interaction. So I think even if you're not a coach, but you're a leader as well, it's if you open up yourself to that, then there's a lot of things you'll realize. So with authenticity, for me, I realized that it's hard to be authentic because a lot of times you want to be someone else sometimes. So because it's you're wondering if people are going to accept you or going to like you, or sometimes you want to change for certain people. And I think that when you do that, it's something that you're kind of fighting against because it's not you. So I think the more that you just accept who you are, the more if you work with what you have, it's actually a lot easier to be that way. And like I said, as leaders also in an organization, if you use that and tying it up to strengths also, being authentically you, using your top 5 strengths, and not wanting, why didn't I have this strength, or why don't I have this, and why don't I have that strength? It's harder because it's not naturally. But if you just practice that with intention every single day, and just, I think, celebrate that is important. We sometimes forget to celebrate that. Oh, I was good at this because I had woo, or I did this because I had empathy, and just saying it out loud. Like I said, like the naming part of strengths and saying it out loud makes you acknowledge it more, because I think we don't do too much of that, acknowledging ourselves. So the way to bring out authenticity more is just to acknowledge what it is and say it out loud what it was. So I was able to use competition here. I was able to use strategic thinking. I was able to use, so just saying that and staying with the feeling. I think there's a difference also, Sarah, with saying it and not feeling it. Because if you remember, if you think about this, the things that we remember in our lives, the experiences that we remember in our lives, are the ones we strongly felt about, right? The excitement, the sadness, the joy. So if we can just sit with it, acknowledge what our strengths are, and sit with the feeling that came with it, then we're going to remember that. And the more, I think, we're going to acknowledge who we are. So I think that's the missing part also, that we're not able to just celebrate who we are and just sit with ourselves and enjoy the moment, or enjoy what made that what we did successful, and what made what we did work. So I think that's important. And then the other part, resilience, is also important, because I feel like it's what's going to get us through. If we're able to use resilience and purpose, really, and use purpose as our North Star. So even in sports, and if you do sports, if you're an athlete also, the reason why athletes are able to win in competitions, or teams are able to win in competitions, because they have a strong sense of purpose. So even if the going gets tough and I don't want to do this, I want to give up, what's going to give you grit and what's going to give you resilience is that purpose, is a strong sense of, this is who I am, this is where I want to go, and I'm just going to keep on doing this even if it's hard. So I think it's remembering that as well, and knowing that you have a toolbox, because a lot of times we feel like we're alone. I'm alone. I can't do this. I'm helpless. It's impossible. No, like I always tell my son, that there's a solution to everything, to every challenge that we have. So the solution lies within us. We have our internal tools. We can find ways to make that happen. We just have to search inside ourselves and ask ourselves, what are the strengths that we have? What are maybe the mindsets we need to change? And not thinking that the world around us is controlling us, but we have the power to control things around us. So again, going back to being reflective versus reactive, the more reflective you are, the more you're able to manage your reactions, the more you're able to control the environment around you. And the more you're not able to make the environment take hold of you. So there's a very, very big difference there.
I like that, especially in the current environment where people want strength within them. And what I'm hearing and I'm sensing, and the analogy that's coming to me right now, Coach Anda, is your purpose is your renewable source of energy. It's constant motivation. You can always rely on that. Whereas money and other factors of motivation could be like oil. It runs out. But purpose, is constantly going to keep giving you that motivation as well. So, And I love how you've been able to ask really important, tough, yet caring questions around, what's your people's strategy? What kind of leader you want to be? And sort of helping them be more reflective than reactive. I love how you're sort of intertwining these things to help them be more authentic as well. And the couple of questions that have come through, from Jerome as well. How do you handle clients who are hard-headed? How do you deal with those?
Okay, so I have a lot of that, and those are my favorite clients. and as you know, like in one of my top 5 strengths is woo. So that's That's charm. No, just kidding. Well, no, or winning others over. So I love winning difficult people over. I really do. And so, but there are techniques to do that. I think it's like a different approach. It's meeting again them where they are. So a lot of it is you can't force things at first. You have to. There's a lot of acknowledging, I think. So with people who are tough, maybe they're trying to show you a tough exterior, but deep inside there's a lot of things going on. So there's a lot of acknowledgement that you have to have. So let's say I had a client before, really, really great in what he was doing. He was like the think tank of the organization, like really genius. But the thing is, he felt he was great and he didn't want to listen to anyone. And so what I did with him, but he had a lot of things that he had to work on because he thought he was so good that he thought that other ideas were not good or he wasn't listening to other people. So the way I approached it was, I used it again in the lens of strengths. And I said, okay, so let's look at your top strengths and let's look at on the ways where this can really get in the way. And so he saw that, but I felt that that wasn't enough and that needed like hard evidence. So that's when I got the feedback from the people around him. And I said that, if you work with these people around you and they're kind of saying that, what do you think of that? And interesting. He was getting defensive. He's like, no, that's not me. I'm not like that. So it's no. And I said, okay, wait, hold on. Let's take a deep breath, and let's just try to look at this in just out of curiosity, a curious lens. And so, what do you think made the person say that? Maybe there was some incidents that you had before that maybe a small incident. I use like kinder words, like a small incident, but it's really a big incident. So a small incident or something in the past that happened that just made that person think that way. Maybe there was something, or let's go back and think about it. And so with thinkers like that, they just like to just think and say things. So I was like, just pause. So you're also helping them learn the value of thinking, of pausing. I'll give you a few minutes, think about it. And then he did. He's like, oh, wait a minute. There was this time when this person had. I was like, there, exactly. So I was more gentle with him. I said, okay, so now that you see that, again, I tied it up with purpose. Remember, you said that you wanted to be this kind of a leader. You wanted this to happen. You wanted to make this impact in the organization. So now, if you focus on these areas that they're talking about, how will this help you reach your goal? See, so there's when they see the value of, I don't want to do that, they're saying that it's not important. But when they see how important it is for them, how it's tied up to their motivation, it's tied up to their purpose, then they're going to want to do it. So, so with that question, it's really a more gentle approach, more of encouraging, more of like acknowledging all the time what he's saying. But of course, if there are things that you don't agree on, you just be quiet, you just say, just nod your head, just listen. Because I don't agree. I mean, if there are things that I don't agree with, I don't say like, yes, I agree. I'm very honest anyway. So I just say like, okay, yes, you said that. Okay, I see that. So that kind of approach, gentle, affirming, but also slowly like trying to find your way to show him the value of that to him. Because it's a lot about, for people who are like that, sometimes it can be egotistical. So it goes back to him. So, okay, you're saying that this is important for you. So how will this help you? How will be this of value to you? So what are the benefits of doing this? When they realize the benefits of that and they even list it down with you, then they're going to realize, oh, okay, I want to do that. And when they forget that, they will forget that. Let's say in 2 months have passed and they're back to doing that. And I go back to, again, my tough question would be, what is the value of this again? Remember, you mentioned that these are the list of values that you'll get out of this. What was that again? And so it makes them want to do it because they said it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Coach Anna. This has been very insightful. And as you know, sort of we're coming to the close of the session today as well in the hour. One thing I've learned a lot from today as well, that your amazing humility and what you bring is being a coach who coaches with courage and care. So thank you for being you and bringing authenticity and resilience to our leaderships. The message you talked about was, I have a little show and tell, so which is around, you talked about different emotions people have. I love this movie Inside Out. So anger, joy, envy, sadness. And this is an insight for all the coaches listening in. Bring your best, bring your authentic side in your coaching as well, because while we're helping others be authentic and others, be resilient, we need to start with ourselves first. So thank you, Coach Anda. This has been an honor and pleasure listening to you. Jim, over back to you to bring this home as well. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, great conversation. We're out of time for questions, but Sarah, you did my job for me. So that's always kind of nice. You brought all the questions in real time. So appreciate it. And then Coach Anda, thank you for joining us this evening or tomorrow morning. How's the future's okay? I assume at this point you guys are in the future and it looks bright. So with that, we'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available now in Gallup Access. Head out to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. There you can sign up for the CliftonStrengths community newsletter. So if you want to stay on top of all the things that we're doing here, if you go all the way to the bottom of the page, give us your email address and we'll send that to you each and every month. For coaching, master coaching, or if you want to become a Gallup-certified strengths coach like we've talked about, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget, if you want to sign up for these, like maybe tonight's the first night or tomorrow is the first time you attended one of these, and you want to know when they're coming up, sign up at gallup.eventbrite.com. Just create an account, follow us, and I will notify you each time we have a brand new event. Speaking of a brand new event, we're excited to talk about the 2021 Gallup at Work Summit that's coming up June 8th and 9th, and we'd love to have you there. You can register today. That registration is available. If you're a Gallup certified coach, you get a discount. Gallup@work.com has all the details. You can follow us on any social platform. Just search Clifton Strengths. We want to thank you for joining us. And thanks for coming out. If you found this useful, we'd love for you to share it. Thanks for coming. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.